Welcome back to Stooge Stream. I'm your host, the Stooge. This is another Is It Worth Playing? And this time we're looking at Bonk'sAdventure for the Game Boy. Being one of the probably only Australians that owns a PC Engine, I actually have Bonk'sAdventure 1 and 2, the originals. The PC Engine is the Japanese version of the US TurboGrafx 16. Actually lasted a lot longer and had a lot more support as well. But I have played Bonk'sAdventure 1 and 2. Unlike the NES cart, which is very, very expensive and pretty much just a port of the first Bonk'sAdventure, the Game Boy game seems to be slightly different, with even though some levels feeling the same or almost being the same as Bonk'sAdventure 1 and 2, they have been slightly modified to fit the handheld format, which is a good thing, but we'll get to that in a minute. Let's have a look at the game overall and start with the graphics. The sprites themselves are nice and big. Now, you'd think on a handheld that that's a disadvantage, and in some games it is. In Bonk'sAdventure, they're just the right size. They're big enough so you can see exactly what's happening on screen, but not so big that they take up all of the real estate and make it difficult to see what's coming up next. The levels themselves have been designed in a way to fit the actual size of the screen. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up in graphics is because the levels are quite detailed and quite well designed. There's some levels that are vertical and climbing levels, some of your normal left to right running levels, water levels. There's all sorts of different things in this game. Like a classic platformer, it offers you a lot of variety in the way the levels are designed and what you can actually do. And graphically, that comes across really nicely. The water levels look fantastic. When you're climbing the trees, it looks like you're climbing trees. Altogether, the visual presentation of the game is fantastic, especially for a handheld game and the limitations that the original Game Boy offered. Sound design. Bonk has always had some interesting sounds, and these come across into the Game Boy as well as far as sound effects and background music. It's not anything classic, it's not Super Mario Brothers 1-1 theme that you're going to be humming for the rest of your life. But the music and the sound effects work really well for the game itself. When you power up, that doink, 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 doink sound is very cute. That comes across from the original TurboGrafx PC Engine game to the NES game to the Game Boy. Nothing, as I said, is overly memorable, but nothing's bad. Nothing feels out of place. Everything works really well for the game and overall adds to the experience and is quite nice. The worst thing about sound effects is when you can say that they don't fit. Nothing in this game is like that. At worst, it blends into the background. At best, you're like, oh, that's cute. Mechanics. How does the game play? Well, the Bonk games, I should say, are a little bit different to a classic platformer, though they do have the same momentum system as other platformers a la Mario, where you can hold down a button, move a little bit faster and jump a little bit higher. It doesn't quite rely on that. It more relies on the headbutt and head spin mechanics. Now, if you've never played a Bonk game at first, they might seem a bit awkward and a bit difficult, and as if the game's been designed extremely head heavy, which is a complaint that I had in the Kid Chameleon game design, which I don't have in the Bonk design because it works a lot better. Bonk's main offensive weapon is a headbutt, or a jump and head lunge, which means all the physics are put into how he actually moves when he lunges forward with his head or with his headbutt. Once you work this out, it's actually quite easy to use. It just feels awkward at first because it's so radically different from all the other platformers of its time and generation, and even now. When you're in the air, you can continuously press headbutt to do a head flip that makes you somewhat hover down to the ground. And this comes in really handy for jumping over gaps, defeating certain enemies, all sorts of things. Another really cool thing is because Bonk's offensive weapon is his head, he can hit things from underneath. You can jump up and hit things. Now there's certain enemies and certain bosses that this really comes in handy with, especially the shark ship enemy, boss of level, I believe, 3 or 4. You actually need to jump and hit him from underneath when he's higher than you flying around. So all in all, the actual mechanical design of the Bonk games are so radically different from everything else around it. I'll be honest, the first time I played them, I'm like, I don't like this. It took me a while to get into the actual mechanics and how the game works. But once I did, now I absolutely love it. I understand it. It's very different. But once you get used to it, it is fantastic. So there is a learning curve as far as how Bonk's abilities work, how his momentum works, how to use the jumping, spin, hover thing. There is a really, really high learning curve, but it's not too steep. Once you figure everything out, once you've played with it a little bit, you'll be like, oh, I get it now, and you'll be off and running. This I can't say a yes or no to straight off the bat. I can't be like, yes, the mechanics are fantastic, or no, they're not, because again, even myself, it took a while for me to get into it, but it is something that you will learn over time, and it isn't broken by any means. It's actually really cool. It's just so different. It takes time to get used to. What about the game itself? How long is it? How does it work and so forth? Well, it's got your basic villain style princess story, but you're cave people, and off you go to save her. It happens over a whole bunch of islands. It is a short game. Once you've finished it once, I mean, it took me about an hour to finish it the first time, but I have played a lot of Bonk games. But if I played it again, now that I know all the enemy design, and how the bosses work and the boss rush section and so forth, I think I could get through it in probably half an hour, 40 minutes. It's not a long game, but you have to think that this game was designed for handheld play. So in that regards, it's perfect. This is a game that you can finish in a car ride to grandma and grandpa's house, or you can finish in an afternoon in under an hour when you're waiting for someone. It's not a game that's going to take you a whole lot of time, but the level design is really good and takes handheld gameplay into account. It pushes you forward really well. The power-up system in the game, which I forgot to mention in mechanics, is really fun. So you power up from just normal Bonk that can headbutt to stone Bonk that can jump and headbutt, and when he hits the ground, everything turns to stone. You can get your invincibility power up, and it all pushes you forward bit by bit. The fact that the game isn't difficult either by any stretch of the imagination, and it's quite easy to build up lives and so on. Until the last boss, you shouldn't really have too many problems getting through this game. And even then, it may take you one or two continues just to work out his pattern and where exactly you have to hit him, and then after that, it's really easy. I like that though when it comes to handheld game design. The designers took into account the fact that you're not going to have a huge amount of time to play this game, and they want you to get through it and enjoy it and be able to enjoy the entire experience. The other thing is, there is hidden stuff all over the place. There's different ways to get through levels, so they've added in enough replayability that it makes it worth coming back to. As far as cost as well, the handheld version of Bonk'sAdventure isn't too expensive. It's not the great Loch Ness Monster maybe has been cited once or twice NES cartridge. Even the PC Engine and TurboGrafx versions are getting up there in price. I mean, I got lucky and got Bonk'sAdventure 1 for about 25 bucks shipped and 2 for about the same. That's really cheap for the PC Engine. Whereas the Game Boy game, especially the Japanese version, and being the fact that Game Boy is region free and you don't really need to read the story to be able to play the game, I mean, you can get it for 15, 20 bucks shipped. That's not bad at all. And for a game of this quality, that's pretty good value. So let's wrap this up overall. Is Bonk'sAdventure on the original Game Boy the black and white classic, or green and white, or green and grey classic worth playing? Absolutely. If you're into platformers, this is a great platform adventure game. Again, the mechanics are a little bit weird, but once you get past that and you get used to it, they're really good. The presentation and sound is great. All in all, it's a really good package, and for a game of this quality to run on the original Game Boy is quite surprising, because as you can see by the video behind you, it looks nice, it runs smooth. There's, I think maybe once or twice I experienced the tiniest little bit of slowdown. So overall, I definitely give Bonk's Adventure for the original Game Boy a big thumbs up, and if you come across it and you're collecting, this is one you should definitely pick up. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, and we are doing an Atari 2600 AV modded console giveaway at the moment. The video announcement should be up very shortly on how you can enter that. There's also 4 more prize packs of Atari 2600 games that we're giving away, so well worth getting involved and entering that. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Stooge Stream. We'll be back with more streaming content, more Is It Worth Playing, our Stoogecast podcast, our TNA and WCPW recaps, and all sorts of other cool stuff coming up shortly. Thanks for watching.